Headline: PlayStation to skip Gamescom 2022. The company joins a growing list of publishers not attending this year. Sony has announced its decision to skip Gamescom 2022, adding PlayStation to the expanding list of publishers that will be making an appearance at the popular annual convention in Cologne, Germany. Okay, so why are we talking about this?
Why are we talking about this?
Is Gamescom like a big deal?
Honestly, I've only heard it peripherally.
E3 level.
But if we're going to take this, I mean, it might be in Germany.
Okay.
Okay, so here's the thing. This is a trend that is not only happening in gaming, but it's happening in every aspect of media. And I brought this to have a conversation with you guys and to have a conversation about chat if this is the direction where we should be heading. Because, okay, think of the Netflix of old, where you can truly find anything and everything there, because it was this conglomeration of pretty much anything you wanted to see. And compare it to Netflix now, that is in stark competition with Disney Plus, with Paramount, I think it's Plus too.
Paramount Plus, HBO Max,
right?
Amazon Prime.
So it's a competition with all these things, and all these companies are well, Netflix is doing it, I can do it too.
So a lot of these companies they're having their own events like this.
Right. And so Nintendo has something called that's Nintendo Direct, where they specifically, broadcast their games. Sometimes they even have something as niche as only for Pokemon which is one of their hugest IP.
I have a friend who goes to a lot of Pokemon convention type things. Yeah.
So do I. Square Enix, which was the company that creates and publishes the game that we were talking about last week, Final Fantasy, recently had something similar for the 25th anniversary of Final Fantasy VII. And so this is a pattern that keeps presenting itself. But first, I want to present the positives of this.
Okay.
I'm sure you guys have heard of E3 by now.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
If you haven't, in the chat, E3 was a gaming convention where it was huge. A bunch of companies would put up their stands. They would put a bunch of hot girls that knew nothing of what was going on and be like, hey, come here and play this game.
Nor should they.
They're
not required.
Right. Yes, queen. And then, so they come here, they promote the games, people played all the games from all the companies, and then the interesting thing about when the event ended, it was who won E3? Who had the best appearance? Was it Sony? Was it Microsoft?
Yeah.
Was it Nintendo? What was the best individual game? What was the best indie game? And so it was all these things, and it became a celebration of games in general. So that's the positives. The negative is a lot of great games get lost within all the noise of the big guys, the A-listers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of companies, the pressure to make something incredible in E3 was such that companies would literally dedicate months, and I'm talking months, of the production time to exclusively work on E3 announcements and trailers, and then Tokyo Game Show announcements and trailers. And this is one of the biggest reasons why companies like Square Enix have had to delay their video games, because they make a version of the game exclusively to be demoed in E3, and it's basically created in an engine that won't be the actual engine where they're going to develop the game. And so they've just
Do you think that all of that hype for creating trailers and demos for E3 made it so that the quality of their finished product was lower? Or that it just was a time conflict?
In my opinion, probably both, but way more skewed towards time. There's a joke amongst the Final Fantasy community is whenever they announce, and by the way, it's never been wrong. Whenever they announce a game, add 2 years to it.
Yeah.
Minimum.
Yeah.
There's been some games that have been delayed for a decade.
Yep.
Final Fantasy 15 was originally going to be Final Fantasy versus whatever. It was going to have some weird title. It was going to be very dark and introspective. And they literally delayed it for a decade to the point where it had to become 15. Like,
But at that point, is that just lacking resources, investment, staff? What is that about?
I think a lot of it had to do with. So Final Fantasy 13 came. It was like absolutely reprehensible, and if you like it, please politely leave, like for real.
I'm gonna have to stop Dane there and say, please do not politely leave.
Don't leave.
Please
Just leave hate
Please
comments.
stay around and say negative stuff about Dane.
Please.
Don't worry, Brett. No one likes that game, so like no one will
Well,
leave.
then your statement wasn't all that brash, anyways.
Okay.
Well, sorry if I'm petty. Anyway, so like they were really heading in a direction was like, we're gonna explore the universe and it's gonna explore multiple stories within the universe. But then the universe came and it's a humping pile of you know what, and I bet it was a bunch of like, wow, we just spent a bunch of money on this trailer. No one likes like the original world where we're hosting it. It's so I bet it's a lot of like data coming in and people analyzing. It's like, what the hell are we gonna do? And I bet a lot of it is that they spent a lot of time, a lot of money, and a lot of man hours on making an incredibly beautiful trailer that ultimately ends up in nothing.
So does that make it a good thing if they have their own conventions and they don't have to adhere to the timetable of whatever convention that you're talking? Whether we're talking about E3, whether we're talking about Gamescom, is it better that they hold their own events and make their announcements on their own schedule? Like that's going to actually get you to product release better.
Here's the thing. If they're still gonna follow the format where like our event is always at a set time, at a set place, at a set
if it's the
thing,
same time every year,
then
you're
isn't
still-
it just the same?
It's arbitrary, yeah.
However, what you do remove is the direct point of comparison.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like it's no longer it's being compared, right, to its predecessors within your brand. It's not necessarily being compared to your competitors. So that's the advantage in terms of the industry.
Disney does D3 and does a lot of releases for, and they do like Star Wars. I forget what the Star Wars convention is. There's also DC does Fandom where they release their own trailers. Whereas always that stuff used to always come out at Comic-Con. Now they spread them out and stuff. Granted, there's also a lot more stuff getting made, so they can still have their Comic-Con releases. I'm taking this over to an industry that I'm more familiar with.
Yeah.
But they're a lot less, you're a lot less, well, DC is not, but most of the film industry is better about getting their stuff out on time.
I'm also not as familiar with the video game industry, but to me it seems like PlayStation or Nintendo, all these companies moving towards having their own like in-house conventions is sort of playing it safe and avoiding having to compete for people's attention.
Yep.
Which might make products lower quality. Like it ultimately is about what the people want, and even if E3 exerted too much pressure on companies and they ended up making poor decisions with releasing trailers and demos that didn't actually represent what they were creating, it maybe was better for like meritocratic competition.
Yeah, the best
than what's
buzz
going
comes
on
out
right
of
now.
it. Yeah.
It also reminds me of VidCon, just because VidCon started yesterday. And it is kind of old school, you know, for an independent thank you. An independent company to come out and meet the need for all of these people to come together and talk about the industry, not just one conglomerate.
That's a good point. However, okay, so you do gain all those benefits. However, if let's say you actually have the best product, like you're having a game, it's revolutionary. Now you lose the buzz of like the winner of E3. You know what I'm saying? Like.
Yeah.
There were all these games, and like you reign supreme. And by the way, like the way like marketing teams do it is like the number one E3 game within this specific category and this specific date. Yeah. You know, like they get really niche and specific, and ultimately, like they all market it as like we won E3. Mm-hmm. So like they lost like that angle. I mean, but. I kind of agree that like if your competition is yourself, then it's only as good as like your like the expectations that you set upon yourself.
Yeah.
But the tragedy about like the gaming industry itself, it's like, man, it's like really one of the most abusive industries there are.
As far as like the worker, yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely.
like there was a game that like famously outed themselves. It was called like Red Dead Revolver, and the publishing studio was called Rockstar Games.
Red Dead Redemption?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it like a spin-off of that?
No, it's Red Dead Redemption.
Wait.
You said Red Dead Revolver. Is that like some other thing that they
It's Red Dead Redemption 2. Yeah, correct.
Okay.
So the thing about when that game came out, I think it was
Crunch time.
one of the head of the companies was like, guys, we're so happy this game came out. You don't know how many 16, 18-hour days we made our staff go through.
Yeah.
But at least they have unlimited menstruation days.
Yes.
Basically. and then people were like, excuse me, 16-hour days? And then the horror stories came out of people's like, yeah, I got divorced. Like, I had to live in my cubicle. I have like insane depression. And it's like, you know, like
it would be better for them to just hire like independent contractors than
delayed a year.
An army of video game making slaves.
My favorite game of all time is called Xenogears, and like this game is like one of the most ambitious video games of all time, and it's divided in 2 discs. The last disc is literally almost not a game; it's a narration, because they were so dead set on releasing the game in time that they didn't have time to literally make the game. So
it just became like a weird
they
movie.
are telling you what happened,
Yeah.
and then they takes you to the last dungeon, and you finish it, and you're like, what the hell happened?
Do you think a lot of what's going on here, these outcomes that COVID had anything to do with it? Because COVID killed a lot of these conventions for several years.
No, they were dying out. A lot of it was Me Too, actually. A lot of it was...
Oh, yeah.
For real? Because
all
of the
sorts
girls.
The first pandemic.
Them, but also like think Vic Mignogna and like the anime conventions where they would talk about like all the bad behavior that people got up to there, which ends up just being a lot of hysterics and people like, look, okay. I skated for 25 years. I've been to conventions and to events all over. And, you know, people tend to be kind of, you know, because you're out of town, you're doing whatever. It's just adults get up to adult behavior when doing these things. And the stories you would hear about it became like Me Too stories from that industry.
Right.
Because a lot of those guys like have a lot of power. Those game developers and they have a lot of power.
They do.
Yeah.
But it originally came from the term that was used to like talk about those women wasn't models. It was booth babes.
Booth babes.
So they were like, well, this is very objectifying and yada yada. But it's like...
It's their job, though.
By the way, you know...
They love it. By the way,
yes, you know
they
who
love
was
it.
the-
Same with the monster chicks for
Right.
Chicks, is that offensive now? The women who used to do the race car, the car events and everything. They love it. It's everybody else telling them that they're not supposed to love it.
The biggest ambassadors against the Me Too movement,
Thank you.
specifically in that regard, were the booth babes themselves that were like, man, dorks are actually pretty friendly.
Yeah.
And like what they do was like either like creepily talk about the game, but they try to get us into it.
They want you to love it as much as they do.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
and
kinda
like
sweet.
It is sweet, and it's sweet that they put it that way.
It's like if you've ever been in a relationship and you're like, and you have something you're really passionate about and you try to get your partner to like it, and you know that they're never going to like it the same way you like it, but you try. And your partner's like, that's great, honey. That's fantastic.
And honestly, like being as beautiful as those girls are is hard. And and if
It's a lot of work.
For real,
You know,
like
Dane. Personally.
I know. Like I can no longer be a booth hunk. And like
Funk.
and if they can get compensated for it, like God bless, dude. Like get the money, honey.
Yep.
You know what I'm
Agreed.
saying? Like and so like you're because of your like ridiculous like pandering to no one, because like everyone that agrees with you already agrees with you,
And nobody else actually cares.
the rest of us are like whatever. Like now you've put the people you're trying to protect in the unemployment
Thank
line.
you.
It's
Thank you.
absolutely ridiculous.
Dane's like, I'm not saying that I agree with booth babes, but I'm not anti-booth babe. is what
Buddy,
Dane
I
is
agree
saying.
with booth babes.
Pro team booth babe.
For like F yeah. Why not?
So what do you think they should do? With conventions dying out, what do they do?
I think you shouldn't be exclusive. You should have your own thing and support those who are being like massive conglomerates. Like if you don't want to show like the big reveal and you want to make it during your thing, at least, you know, I don't know, have the decency to like refer to like the community and like hint to it, like make a little teaser. Those aren't that hard to make. It doesn't take that many man hours. Like if you're already working like on a 1 minute and 40-second trailer, drop a 15-second teaser.
Yeah.
Like really like captivate them and satiate their appetite. You know, like I think you can do both. From the marketing and public relations perspective, honestly, I'm a big fan of like keeping it, because here's another thing that can happen. So you're in E3, we've become Danecom. Like Dane Games.
We're at DaneCon.
And we made I don't know, Brett and Dane's Excellent Adventure. And like, it's a game.
Sign me up for Brett and Dane's Excellent Adventure.
It's full of booth babes and like a bunch of cool
like
stuff.
Has Been Hotel, but with us.
Like Brett skates, I do whatever the hell I do. It's incredible. And then let's say we're revealing the game and everyone is like, a problem that can have that has happened is the presenter is like, hey, wasn't that a stinker? Because like he's just trying to be funny in front of an audience. And that, you know, from like a public relations perspective is like, bro, what are you doing? That cost $3 trillion.
Rival
there's
company.
There's a comment that's somewhat relevant. They said these people that work in the marketing department of gaming companies need to stay the hell off of Twitter and thinking that that's the majority of thought.
And can I tell you?
Because Twitter's not real life.
I have a lot of insider knowledge about this on a lot of companies, and and I'm gonna be very careful about what I say because I don't want to talk about the company itself, but I have it on good authority that a lot of huge companies, the social media teams they hire is like daughters and girlfriends of publishers that do not care the slightest about the game, and everything they do is they Yasqueen it up.
Yep.
And this is the fandom that pushed back against all that BS. Like all the craziness started with Gamergate.
Yep.
And it was weirdos like us that were like, no, stay away from our games. We respect your opinions, or we respect whatever the hell you want to do. Elsewhere, please. And I don't know, like these pariahs like keep somehow entering the companies and once again making it about them and not the game.
Yep.
They're like Yoko Ono types. Of
For
gaming
real,
industry.
that's a perfect description.
Interesting.
Have you ever seen the meme of it's like Yoko Ono and was it John Lennon?
Yeah.
It's just them waiting for a maid to fix the bed that they were protesting on, and like yeah, I'll send you. It's great.
That's funny.
We had some super chats. So I'm gonna go through the super chats.
DizWiz sent 2,000, I believe they're won from South Korea. I just learned that today. Saying again, simping Brett with weird currency. Thank you for your weird currency.
Thank you.
Hava Owens said, game companies are some of the biggest crooks.
The first thing that I thought of
true.
Of recent memory was giving people the test footage for Cyberpunk 2077 on PC, but not.
I heard that game crashed a ton.
Not explaining that
like
playing it on PS4 was
garbage.
essentially impossible.
Oh,
Right?
dude, there's a bunch of games. That's the unfortunate thing about games, because like, so the funny thing is like the conferences are becoming very exclusive, but the games are becoming very like open-ended. So it's like this game is out on here, on this or that. And usually when that happens, it's like a 60% chance that one of the ports is going to be god awful. Like it's going to be, but like I have Cyberpunk for the PlayStation 5 and I literally can't finish the game because one of the main missions is glitched out. Yeah. So I can only play it to that point and be like, well,
that was fun.
Okay, you know, and they keep patching it and ruining it, and like sometimes they fix it, but if you can't play your game from beginning to end upon purchase, like, buddy, what are we doing?
I seriously, like, I used to get a lot of like excitement out of just like it's kind of ghoulish, but I would love to listen to the Quartering just talk about all the bad stuff going on in the gaming industry, because I'm just like, man, I am so glad that does not affect me. Thank goodness.
It's really like
very frustrating.
Gaming is like one of the most incestuous industries. Like absolutely, like they're all dating each other. They're
Well, that was a big problem with Gamergate was that,
exactly.
for how the articles get written and stuff like that. So.
Yeah, and it's still that way, by the way.
Doesn't change.
And like,
Thank you.
The person stating the reporter, and then the CEO stating the person from the conference, and that's why they get the 8 p.m. instead of the 5 p.m. Like, it's not very meritocratic, and that's where I'll leave it.
All right, Mary, more.
Nathan Koss has a question for you, Dane. How do you feel about Bethesda recapping the past 5 years of space RPGs with their new title?
We shall see we shall see when it drops.
Also, Uncomfortable Chair sent some that aren't super chats, but I love them. Said, "I'll never stop saying chicks. I love chicks." And
Yes.
then chick emojis.
Chicks rule.
I have I think I still say it a fairly decent amount, but because I tend to be very polite, or I try to be very polite. So I knew
It's
for a
better
fact.
than some alternatives.
Is that a pejorative?
I knew
chicks?
it would not
No.
affect. I knew it would not offend Mary, but with our large female fan base here, I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure it upset at least one person.
Crispy Leg Transport LLC said, "If any of you would like to donate me a PS5, I would be happy. Great show today." I'm sure you would be.
Well, thank you. I don't quite have the money for that, but thank you.
And they're impossible to get to.
Yeah.
Bryce Wilson said, "Cyberpunk 2077 makers made their employees work insane hours just to release a terribly made game."
It's a
So
bummer.
But you know what's interesting about that development team? Anita Sarkeesian, like the mobster she is, she was like, "Hey, your game has rumors of being a little too controversial, and if you don't want consequences upon you,
you
should consider hiring
Yep.
some of us, and maybe the bad press will go away."
We're consultants.
It's
Right,
literally
consultants.
It's literally it's literally the gangster who walks into your convenience store hitting his bat like this, going, "Sure would be a shame if somebody came in here and broke your display case.
Right.
But if you pay me this amount of money per month, I will gladly make sure that you're protected."
Mm-hmm.
And in fairness, like one of the heads in the studios was like, "No,
Yeah.
we know who you are and we know what you do. We know how to make games." And I mean, that ended up being a lie, but I don't know. Peace be
Good
upon
for them,
him.
I guess. Waffles Sensei said, "Never ever release a video game before it's done or overrush the final product. I speak for all gamers when I say we will wait as long as it takes. Just give us the game you promised."
Yes, King.
Unavailable ID name said, "Dane, I super chatted the other day about your opinions on the Dragon Age show, but you weren't here, my friend. Thoughts, predictions, overall feelings?" Everyone's so curious about your thoughts on things.
It's
Do you want my job, Dane? You have to teach me the social media stuff if we want to switch. But
no thanks. It's man, it's the adaptation of a video game, thus it's gonna be horrible. That's my prediction. I'm sorry.
thanks for watching this clip, guys. If you want to see full episodes or follow us on social media, links are in the description below. Bye.
Bye.